in that. So I'm not sure what happened. Creating the bad habit myself in that. So I'm not sure what happened, but I do know it has to do with incomplete ideas, which means I'm communicating but I do know it has to do with incomplete ideas. But I do know it has to do with has to do with incomplete ideas, which means I'm communicating too soon to the team what needs to actually happen.
Yes, yes. Oh, I love all these pieces. I say this all the yes, yes, yes.
Needs to actually happen.
Yes, yes. Oh, I love all these pieces. Yes. Oh, I love all these
actually happen.
yes, yes. Oh, I love all these pieces. I say this all the time because we, as the front of our business, and the way that Quick Start business, and the front of our business, and the way that Quick Starts function, and even if you're not a Quick Start in your business, but you're the head of the company, I always tell this story. So the way that creation and ideas happen is there's like a million creation and ideas happen is there's a million way that creation and ideas happen is there's a million bajillion possibilities and ideas up in the ether. And then we pull down like 187 of them, just down a little bit. And then from those 187, we find 30 that are awesome to go to like step one. And of those 30, we might take 3 to step 2. And then there's 1 that should actually keep going. I don't include other people in my world until I'm down to those 3 and usually down to the 1. What mostly happens with quick starts, especially in visionaries, is that we start talking about all 187. And then what happens in our personal lives and inside of our business is we suddenly become the person who has all these ideas but never completes anything, which is not actually true because that's not the creative process. The creative process is not all 187 of those things should have ever actually come to fruition. There were probably only 3 that were good enough to get to step 1 and 1 that was able to go to the full length. So I, just like you were saying about, was this a fully evolved idea or not? I tell my team when I'm like, I'm in the creative mode about this, it's not yet ready, don't assign this. And that way I can talk with them and they can know what I'm thinking. Here's another thing that I do. I used to do all of this completely in a vacuum, not tell them while I was in creative process, and then throw out a, hey, we need this in 2 weeks. And they're like, this is like a 6-month project. Why didn't you tell me about this before? So there is that like delicate balance. And again, I go back to the done versus perfect was the thing we used to stop me being the bottleneck. And the way that we prevent bottlenecks in my company is I tell people why I made the change that I made or why and how I made the decision I made. So even if they don't have to think like me, how I made the decision I made. So even if they decision I made. So even if they how I made the decision I made. So they don't have to think like me, but if I how I made the decision I made. So they don't have to think like me, but if I, because I'll give you a great example. Sometimes people will, I'll give you a great example, to think like me. They don't have to think like me. I'll give you a great example. Sometimes people will create or produce or produce um, like we had some PDFs we needed for one of my programs, and they were beautiful workbooks. PDFs we needed for one of my programs, and they were beautiful workbooks. And I gave instruction to my team. My lovely woman went off, built these beautiful workbooks, came back, and I'm like, this is shit, not what I meant. And I didn't say that to her. I was really sweet. I was like, this doesn't exactly match what I was thinking about. But instead of me saying, go do it again, what I was thinking about. But instead of me saying, go do it again, I said, let me tell you what I was thinking. This needs to go over here. This needs to go over here. I want this part to match what I just spoke out and what was in the video. And she goes, oh, okay. And then she was able, I changed one PDF, talked with her about it. She was able to change all 7 others without any instruction from me because I explained why I made the changes versus what most people do when they get something, they're like, oh, this wasn't done right. And you change it and then hand it back. And the person doesn't know why or what. I mean, they might see what you changed, but they don't get it. So I think that's just a great system inside of our business.
Communication, what to communicate, when to communicate, and the depth. I was having a conversation the other day where, there's a conversation the other day where there's a need for transparency. The thing is, sometimes there's the thing is, sometimes there's transparency to the right point for the right role at the right time. And I know I've hit that problem where I'm like, well, everybody's going to know what I know, but that immobile is going to know what I know, but that well, everybody's going to know what I know. That in mobile, early manager, early business owner, that made everybody paralyzed. And so basically, paralyzed. So basically, I'm like, what is going on? Paralyzed. So basically, I'm like, that made everybody paralyzed. So I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, this owner, that made everybody paralyzed. So I'm like, what is going on? So that was an interesting learning experience. And and even now, learning experience. And so that was an interesting learning experience. And even now, every once in a while, I get a little too far down and I'm like, okay, that's fine. That it's not like it was a secret. And I'm like, okay, I get a little too far down. I get a little too far down. It's not like it was a secret. It's not like it I get a little too far down. It's not like it was a secret, so there's no cat out of the bag, but really, you've opened the box. No cat out of the bag, but really, you've opened the box and you can't put it back.
That, and sometimes when people know information, they think that they need to do or not do something. And really, there wasn't any assignment need. So I agree with you. It's not about being hidden, cloaked, or hiding things. It's literally about, like, you know what I liken it to? And I don't want to say like people are like in your business are like children, but we don't tell our son every single thing, but we include him in things that are pertinent when it's time for it. In fact, one of my gals gives this great example about, in fact, one of my gals one of my gals gives this great example about how do you explain complex things to like a 5-year-old. Well, you don't try to break it down like you would to a 35-year-old who has a degree. You would bring it to the 5-year-old for what they are. And again, I'm not saying that people in your company are like 5-year-olds. It is also about a person might not need all of that information. And if you just blasted them out, filled them up, they actually aren't able to do the thing that they need to be doing.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it unfortunately takes them off track. And so figuring out what that is. And to me, figuring out what takes them off track. And so figuring out off track, figuring out what that is. And to me, what that is. And to me, so I'm thinking coming back, figuring out what that is. And to me, takes them off track, figuring out what that is. Coming back to delivery model, and especially if you're part of, now this is an interesting thing because when I came into this conversation with you today, I had not thought about this. And something you had said early on made me realize we are part of somebody else's delivery model most of the time. Right?
Yes.
Right? You're teaching people how to sell, which is part of their delivery model. Your personal brand has this thing. I'm having leadership and has this thing. I'm having leadership teams where everybody's working on themselves or not, and they still have to work together. That's where I focus. And it depends. Where I focus. And it depends in either of those cases. where I focus. It depends in either of those cases. However well it's happening before we get there, it's better when we're done and we have empowered and improved and removed obstacles and blocks that improve and removed obstacles and blocks that improve everything within an organization. And in general, what I'm hearing is that we're increasing awareness. We're increasing awareness. And in general, what I'm hearing is we're increasing awareness and we're increasing communication. Those are the two big things. Communication. Those are the two big things. And if we are doing that, when we recognize where we are in somebody else's, okay, here, I'm finally getting there. This is my talking to think and finishing my idea for you, Laura. When we know Laura, when we know that, we know how to anticipate what our clients need for the space that we occupy in there. For the space that we occupy in need for the space that we occupy in their roles, in their processes.
I love what you just said because you hit on something really, really important. Our chain of how we important. Our chain of how we do things also includes when we give information to a client and they go out into the world and they're doing their part. And it's like I always say, doing their part. And it's like I always say, they're doing their part. And it's into the world and they're doing their part. I always say, I have they're doing their part. I always say I have this VIP day that I do and I'm like, look, I can they're doing their part. I have this VIP day that I do and I'm like world and they're doing their part. I have this VIP day that I do and I'm like, look, I can give you the $1 million idea, but if you go sit on the couch and eat bonbons, it's not going to happen. And what I love is one of my and what I love is one of my current coaches, who again I worked with years ago, and we just started working together again. We got on a call, and she said, "Working together again." We got on a call, and she said to me, "Okay, Laura, tell me where you're going to." She said to me, "Okay, Laura, tell me where you're going to self-sabotage. Tell me exactly what it's going to look like. Tell me exactly how you're going to do it. I want to know this so I can present things to you that match to you and we get you over that self-sabotage." And then she did one other magical thing. When I told her what I did one other magical thing. When I told her what I do for self-sabotage, because we all have it, and what it looks like and how it shows up, and I told her this one thing that we're working on is probably where I'm going to do it first. She said, "Great, let's do it together." And what was fantastic is together. And what was fantastic is instead of her giving me like a homework or assignment to go work on, we did it together because that's the one I wouldn't do on my own. So I really want everyone to pay attention to like, how are you helping your people? How are you helping? How are you helping your people better understand themselves, your clients, your team, yourself? I feel like self-awareness is one of the best things, but also give people the tools so they can then like disseminate it they can then disseminate it into their company. So whenever I'm helping someone with their sales teams, I don't train and maintain and manage sales teams in a vacuum without the entrepreneur. They are the entrepreneur. They are a part of the sales team, because anytime we separate them, well, that energy that that person has disseminates through their entire company. If we look at them separate, we get separate kind of results.
I'm going to backtrack just a little. You were talking about stress testing yourself.
We get separate kind of results.
You were talking about stress testing your system, right? Your processes. Is that the first step to your processes? Is that the first step to test the effectiveness, or is there even a different first step that we should think about?
Yes. Oh my God, that's such a good question.
Different first step that we should think about.
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Okay. So I believe that sales is the thing that lets you know what works and what doesn't work inside of your business. It is the best thing to do. So the very first thing that I recommend to all of my clients, especially if they're working on something new, is go sell it to somebody, because in that moment, you get to walk through the parts of delivery before you go sell it to a whole bunch of other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's a really good piece of information to have. And I'm thinking
You go sell it to a whole bunch of other people.
that's a really good piece of information to have. And I'm thinking about that because, people show up and they act, have
The parts of delivery before you go sell it to a whole bunch of other people.
That's a really good piece of information to have. People show up and they act all the time without anything else. All the time without anything else. People show up and they act all the time without anything else, and it's hard for others to keep up. It doesn't matter if you're brand new to business or you're somewhere in the middle of your career, you're climbing the corporate ladder. Somewhere in the middle of your career, you're climbing the corporate ladder. You're climbing the corporate ladder. In the middle of your career, you're climbing the corporate ladder, or you're at the top of a medium size. You're at the top of a medium sized to large organization. Doesn't matter. Other people will make structures and make structures and make structures, but they don't know how to execute. And the third is there's people that only live in the ideas. So those 137 ideas that you were talking about, they're all there all the time, and they're trying to figure out how to plug them in, which all three of those by themselves create hamster wheels. We might not look at them that way, but they're all a way we get they're all that way, but they're all a way we get we might not look at them that way. They're all a way we get stuck. And so when you were talking about self-sabotage, that made me think of, where do you start? Because it's a really important thing. Where do you start? Because it's a really important thing to recognize, not only in ourselves and our personal awareness, but also in each person within the process. The more know our team, the better we are at knowing when, like what your coach said, let's do that together to move through those difficult parts, because that's what really allows people to grow and see more opportunities. That's what really allows people to grow. That's what really allows people to grow. Because that's what really allows people to grow. Because that's what really allows people to grow. That's what really allows people to grow and see more opportunity within the role they're at for how to add value and to ensure they're not being a process, they're doing a process and get to problem solve and be creative.
I love that. And the other thing that like leads me to is a lot of people go into that land of
They're doing a process and get to problem solve and be creative.
a lot of people go into that land of fix this problem, solve the thing you're not doing well. I do the opposite. I do strength-based coaching and strength-based leadership. Whatever
Well, that's
you're
a
good
thing.
at,
I didn't know that.
leadership.
I didn't know that.
Well, it's now a thing because
got it. Okay, it's a thing.
I have an entire program about it called based coaching and strength based leadership. I have an entire program about it called Amplify, where what we do is we amplify everything that's working and we ignore everything that's not. And I know this might sound a little counterintuitive, but what I find is so many people spend time trying to fix what's not working. Or like, let's say you and I are fantastic quick starts. We are idea makers. We are take actioners. And so a lot of us would probably then be like, well, we need to work on our systems. We need to work on slowing down. No, if we do those things, that's counterintuitive to who we are. But what we might want to do is surround ourselves with some system makers, surround ourselves with some fact finders, surround ourselves with the generators who do the doing. And when you can focus entirely on the strengths of who you are and what you do well, it's like putting like the rocket fuel in a rocket. I watch all of my clients take off who you are and what you do well. It's like entirely on the strengths of who you are and what you do well. It's putting like the strengths of who you are and what you do well. It's putting the rocket fuel in what you do well. It's like putting like you are and what you do well. It's like putting the rocket fuel in a rocket. I watch all of my clients take off because there's no more like off because there's no more like you don't have to I always think of like when you're trying to like go through something, I'm making like some like movements here, but like when you're trying to like get yourself through things, you're like going through like smog or you're going through like hard water or like it's hard to move forward. But when you're strengths based only, you just get your strengths or like it's hard to move forward. But when your strengths making like some like movements here, but like when you don't have to off because there's no more like smog or you're going through like hard water or watch all of my clients take off because there's no more like it's like putting the rocket fuel in a rocket. I watch all of my clients take off, but when you're strengths based only, you just get to climb at a better rate and it's so much easier. Strengths based clients take off, but when you're strengths based only, you just get to climb at a better rate and it's so much easier. Now, again, I'm not saying like if you have some really bad habits in your life that are not helping you, and it's so much easier. Now, again, I'm not saying like if you have some really bad habits better rate and it's so much easier. Now, you just get to climb at a better rate and it's so much easier. Like if you have some really bad habits in your life that are not helping you, maybe you might want to, they're not helping you, maybe in your life that are not helping you, maybe you might want to, yeah, assess those. We're talking about something slightly different. It's about your natural way of being. And when you do strength-based leadership, strength-based sales, strength-based everything, we can just, like, the rate at which you can excel is so much better, faster, and easier because we're not going through the hard work of trying to fix things that don't need to be fixed.
That's interesting. And I have a slightly different approach. And I'll be completely honest, this comes from a
Things that don't need to be fixed.
I have a slightly different approach, and I'll be completely honest, this comes from a chiropractor. I was like,
Ooh.
this worked in my body. Why couldn't it work in? This comes from a chiropractor. I was like,
Ooh.
this worked in my body. Why couldn't it work in the ecosystem of business too? And so, Danny, in the ecosystem of business too. Danny Knowles is my chiropractor, and ecosystem of business too. Danny Knowles is my chiropractor, and it work in the ecosystem of business too. Danny Knowles is my chiropractor, and before that it was Matthew, and both of them were trained by a guy named Donnie Epstein. And the type of chiropractic care that I'm in is starting from the place of ease. The type of chiropractic, and both of them were trained by a guy named Donnie Epstein. The type of chiropractic care that I'm in is starting from the place of ease. So if you go to the chiropractor because you're in pain, it's not fixing the pain, it's starting from the place of ease, which is, in my mind, I'm listening to you and I'm like, it's kind of the place of strength. And
Yeah.
so you bring that peace into these more stressful areas, and you bring that peace into these more stressful areas, and eventually those more stressful areas learn how to change, right? And I saw firsthand, I saw first those more stressful areas learn how to change. Firsthand, I saw it in my body. And eventually those more stressful areas learn how to change. Firsthand, I saw it in my body. I got a great story about that for another day over a glass of wine. But for today, though, I'm thinking glass of wine. For today, though, I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about what you're saying. I'm like, yeah, because there are some things that, yes, we can always be in the stress. And I'm like, yeah, that for another day over a glass of wine. Yes, we worry about that for another day over a glass of wine. Yes, we can always be in the strength, but there are some things that we're going to need for our business that are never going to be our strength. But we have to figure out how to bring peace to that. We have to figure out how to bring compassion to that.
So I'm clapping right now because I'm so excited. So I'm clapping right now because I'm so excited. This is I either clap or I shimmy when I'm excited. So we have a phrase called "the thing must." So
Have to figure out how to bring compassion to that.
we have a phrase called "the thing must be done, but it doesn't have to be done by you." So there was a lot of to be done by you. So there was a lot of stuff in my business that must be done. And if it's on my business, that must be done. And if it's on my plate to must be done, it's not going to happen, or it might not happen very well. I bring this into a lot of my um, or it might not happen very well. I bring this into a lot of my clients who are like not I bring this into a lot of my clients who are not just overachievers, but they don't like to let go of things. And I'm like, look, the thing must be done, but it doesn't have to be done by you. And maybe you can bring somebody in who can help give a client something. A great example is a lot of my great example is a lot of my clients who have agencies. A great example is a lot of my clients who give a client something. A great example is my clients who have example is a lot of my clients who have agencies. They have somebody else agencies. They have somebody else doing the work. It's not them. And then a lot of my clients who are coaches and consultants come in and they're like, I have to do everything. And I'm like, why? Could the thing that you're delivering maybe even be better delivered by somebody like inside of your organization? And that is a your organization. And that is a game changer.
Totally. What makes it bold to what makes it bold?
Game changer.
What makes it bold to evaluate and innovate your delivery model?
Okay. It's bold to
Your delivery model. What makes it bold to evaluate and innovate your delivery model?
it's bold to look at some of the stuff that most people don't want to look at. And I'm going to say this because it's easy to look at what's great. Like when I am doing the this is working and this is working and this is working, like that feels good and easy. It is bold to sit down and have some strong conversations with yourself and with your company. I remember we had an instance can't remember how many years ago it was, but my business model has always been We had an instance, can't remember how many years ago it was, but my business model has always been high, heavy on referrals and also high, heavy on retention in all the positive ways. Like if I had 24 clients at any given time, gave some renewals, 20 of the 24 would renew. And we had an experience where again, you don't always know when you go off track, but sometimes you do. I went off track. Instead of selling things the way I teach, where we bring a couple people on at any given time and a couple people on so you don't have roll off, I created a scenario where I had about 30 clients at one time. A couple of them rolled off, and then a couple of at one time, a couple of them rolled off, and then about 24 of the next ones were going to roll off at the same time. And I had this idea, and I'm like, cool, cool, cool. We just renew everybody. And this time I had 4 renew instead of 20 out of 24. And what was bold for me is I actually had to look at the system of what wasn't working. And what was amazing was what turned started as like a really amazing was what turned started working. And what was amazing was what started as like a really scary moment turned into one of the strongest moments inside of my business. I took a real strong look at what we were doing well and what we were not doing well. And one of the things we were missing was cultivating new people into my business all the time. I thought that I was, but I really wasn't. So we started doing that. What I also did was I got bold and I said, well, guess what? Buck stops here, right at the top. What are you going to do to fix this? And I got into my sales mode and I zhuzhed up a handful of clients because I still have mouths to feed, bills to pay, all the things. And my business doesn't sustain itself with only 1 or 2 or 3 clients. So the bold actions that I took were I did what must be done to get what I desire. That's another one of our core values. And that doesn't, some days what needs to be done is you need to mop the floors. And some days what needs to be done is you need to be in CEO creator mode. And some days what needs to be done is you need to go sell. And some days you need to nurture your clients. But being willing to do it usually gets you through it very fast.
That was the last word. That was it. Thank you, Laura. That was fantastic.
Gets you through it very fast.
That was the last word. That was it. Thank you, Laura. That was it. Thank you. That was it. Thank you, Laura. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. That was fun. It was fun to like dance around the different topics, but still like you did a great job of like pulling me back, because I feel like the thing of business and everything that we do is it's so big and there's so many parts, and everything actually, I thought about when you're talking about the chiropractor of alignment is everything. And you don't align to what is not feeling right. You find the parts that work right and align everything else up to it. And when you do that, everything flows. Like a lot of my clients who get these like sudden, massive, amazing results are like, why did it finally work, Laura? And I'm like, your energy and who you be matched up with your offers, matched up with your processes, your ideal client, like all those moving parts started working together, and like they started going down the same path together, and then works.
I love it. And it's fantastic. And you're absolutely right. And so I know I'm like, people are like, well, that's the eye of the storm. I'm like, is it really? Is it really? Not really. It's probably in it. People are like, well, that's the eye of the storm. I'm like, is it really? Is it really? Not really. It's probably in it. And if it's a sad place, even though it's the calmest place, you got to do a little. And if it's a sad place, and if it's, like, is it really? Is it really? Not really. Not really. And if it's a sad place, even though it's the calmest place, Got to do a little bit of nurturing there.
That's
So,
true.
I mean, our nurturing there.
That's
So,
true.
I mean, our yes, the way that we work together nurturing there.
That's
So,
true.
I got to do a little bit of nurturing there. Yes, the way that we work but nurturing there. Yes, the way that we work together in the ecosystem with which our business processes work, with which the way our business functions in the greater world, and with which we show up in each person that's the we with us, all the we's that make up our company is so, so important. And I know that's the part that I love hearing you talk about process because I'm like, cool, I could do that, but that was actually something I gave up. That was one of those things I'm like, yeah, I can do that, but that is not that is
It's not
not
the
the highest
highest.
and greatest use of my time.
Okay. So one more of my core values
Yeah.
is highest and greatest use of our time. So like my husband, he does all of the dirty work in our house and heavy lifting because he is a like 200 and some odd pound gorgeous man who's got big broad shoulders and he is good at lifting heavy things. And he's the guy who can like scoop up the poop or the vomit and doesn't think about it. My highest and best role is not lifting heavy things and cleaning up gross things. It's nurturing and comforting our kids. And we always say the thing and we always say the thing oh crap, I'm losing the how we say it, but basically the one always say the one who can and comforting our kids. And we always say the one who can does. Oh, that's the other one. The one who can does. So, oh, that's the other one. The one and we always say the one who can does. So if he was asleep and for some reason couldn't come and clean up the gross thing, but I was available, I would clean it up because I'm the one who can. The moment we like activate these kind of things inside of our business too, it makes things so much easier. Like one of my gals did something the other day that was not part of her role because I was like, I need this thing. And she's like, you know what? I know how to do it. Let me get it for you real quick. And I was like, oh my God, I love you.
Yeah. Oh, I remember. Yeah. Oh, I remember when we were doing this new model for this podcast, it was all in my head and I was the bottleneck and everybody was waiting on me to tell them what to do next. And I was like, I got to get this out of my head. And I showed up to one of our staff meetings almost in tears. I mean, this is how open I can actually be with my team. I'm like, not only am I overwhelmed, I can't even form a sentence because I just want to cry. And I said, so I can't do this. I need each of you to help me figure out how do we get this out of my head because I've been trying and I can't. And everybody stood up in their own way, right? Because we're all virtual. We're distributed across the US and Europe, and they helped. And it took us the entire meeting that day. We didn't do anything else, but I will tell you, when I got done, not only did I love every single one of them more, I recognized that we do have a really good team. That we do have a really good team. And sometimes me getting in my own way is me thinking that I'm supposed to be doing it, not not letting it be and figuring out who is supposed to be doing it.
I freaking love it. Also, if you ever want to know how to get the best quality team members, if you get people on board again with your core values, when you love and appreciate and respect them and give them space for them to thrive, they will do anything. One of my gals had a pre-planned 9-day vacation and we had a project that came up and it was 9 days. So there was no way that I could do it where it didn't affect her. And she's like, Laura, I'm on a cruise ship. I have access to internet. I will help you do this part. And I'm like, I know, I'm like, I'll find somebody. And she's like, nope, like I am part of this company. And the only reason why she was, and again, like my team member who just stepped up and did something that wasn't in her role, I'm careful to not ask people to do things that are outside of their role. But when I need the extras, they're willing to show up because we're all on the same page and because I love and appreciate and respect them.
Absolutely. And and that just comes with time. That's
And respect them.
and that just comes with time too, right? We
Mhm.
have to have the ability, the time.
Mm.
What a
Okay,
good,
I
this
want to
was a
talk with
great
you
way. I'll
forever.
say you're on the East Coast, you've already had breakfast. It's almost lunchtime. I'm like, this is a great way to start my day. I've got school started out there. I'll go check in, come back, do some sales calls.
Go make some money, honey.